Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Only Land Fan Show. My name is Kendall Lejeune, and our guest today is Rick Rauch. Over a period of 25 years, Rick Rauch devoted his career to the commercial construction and development industry. Throughout his career, Rick had the opportunity to build, oversee, and complete projects valued at over $300 million, encompassing a wide range of constructions such as high rises, restaurants, entertainment venues, strip centers, gas stations, hotels, and self storage facilities. In March 2023, Rick left his regular employment to fully immerse himself in land investing. To date, he has successfully completed 5 subdivisions, is in the process of closing on a 6th, actively searching for a 7th, and is just beginning to expand his ventures in this field. Rick, thanks so much for joining us. How are you today?
I'm great, Kendall. Thanks for having me. It's a real
Absolutely.
pleasure. Yep.
Well,
Thanks. It's guys like you that are helping the land guys actually get on the map. So I take my hats off to you and just want to thank you for providing an avenue for all of us to share all of our boring land deals with everybody.
it's an absolute pleasure. I absolutely love the land community, having been a member of it myself for several years. These are the types of conversations that just really excite me. So I'm glad that we have so many generous guests such as yourself to just share the wealth of knowledge with us. So let's just get started. How did you get started in doing land deals?
Interestingly enough, I'm in a financial mastermind group called Wealth Without Wall Street.
Mhm.
And they openly share their monthly report with everybody. And I was listening to one of their podcasts and looking at one of their monthly reports. It was probably September of last year. And I noticed in there that one of their better returning investments was land investing. I was like, I've never heard of that before. I had flipped houses, been in construction development, like you talked about, for about 25 years, but never outside of land development had heard of land flipping. Just started doing some research, bought a course that was overpriced and wasn't great information. We'll just leave that where it is. But I spent a little time on that and then just started going down the rabbit hole and got the bug. I was already in the process of setting up a plan to leave my W-2. So I was either going to buy a boring business or start some sort of a side business, something along those lines. And the land thing just seemed like a really good fit with my experience in construction and development. So that's how I got started. I think I finished my course in January of last year. Quickly realized that it wasn't really a good fit for my skill set just because of the experience that I was bringing into this venture, and had a discussion with a mentor, and the mentor suggested to me, hey, you probably need to think about looking at bigger types of land deals, either larger on the purchase side, or you need to look at doing some sort of development. He's, have you thought about subdividing? And so that's how we got here. So I actually signed up for a course with John Jasniak, and he really gave me the gas for my business, quite honestly. And I had shot him a direct message, and we jumped on a consultation call, and it made a lot of sense what he was telling me. And so then I just jumped into his course, and here we are.
Excellent. Yeah, I love that. So, can you talk a little bit about your very first land deal?
Yeah, so I had found a piece of property in Virginia. So when I first started into the land business, I noticed that, of course, I'm from Texas. I live in Houston, south of Houston. It seemed like a lot of the land investors, everybody was working in Texas. And I thought to myself, let me go just look around and see what else is out there. I had stumbled across an article about the Lake Mead of the East, which is actually in Virginia. It's called Smith Mountain Lake. It's a very popular lake. Started doing some research around the lake, was intrigued around about the property in and around Smith Mountain Lake. And I found a 30-acre piece on an auction site, started talking to the agent broker about it, made some good inroads with the broker to give myself an advantage to get the property during the auction process, if you will, and ended up buying that 30 acres. Didn't really know what to do, honestly, outside of I knew I wanted to subdivide it. I underwrote it. I put a plan together of what I thought investors would want to see. I shopped it to a group of investors, and they bought the deal. And I was just like, okay, wow, there's something here. But I didn't have any experience in doing that. My background really didn't really lend anything to land other than the development side of it, but to underwrite your own deal, to go out, find comps, to, call and get pricing for roads, for land clearing, stuff like that. It was just having conversations with people, picking up the phone, building a little bit of confidence in yourself, and then just deciding to put that deal in front of investors and see if they bite. That was the first Subdivide that I did. It was 30 acres, broken into 5 tracts. They were all different sizes, anywhere from 2 acres up to I think 8 acres. And we're almost a year into that one, and we've sold 4 of the 5 properties. I still have one property that hasn't sold yet, but we bought it all in with improvements at 93, and I would say gross sales will come in around 190. So it's about a 2x.
Excellent. And so this property, was this an on-market property that you found?
It was on market in the sense that it was MLS, but it was going through an auction process.
Got it.
So
Got
you had to
it.
go through the process of registering for the auction and then basically bidding against other people that were trying to win the property. And what was interesting is that I won the auction while I was 30,000 feet in the air on an airplane
That's a
on
flex.
the
I
United
love
Wi-Fi.
that. That is awesome. That is awesome. It sounds like you mentioned that there are multiple different size parcels, two acre parcels all the way up to 8 acre parcels in this 30 acre larger subdivide that you did. So can you talk a little bit about the level of development, or were you guys carving roads, or what did that look like for the
No,
subdivide?
so I think just dipping my toe into the water, I didn't want to get into a situation to where I had too much leveraged against the project. So I kept it real simple. We just did basically a simple paper subdivide. This one had paved road. It had 100% paved road frontage across the front of all the tracks, which was great.
Wow.
The back of the property was actually the prettiest, and the big selling point was it had a very large creek on the backside that ran along the back 4 of the 5 properties, which was a huge selling point. One of the properties actually had an old Civil War cemetery on it, so that was another thing where another buyer came in and they wanted that for the history piece of it. The only thing that we did is we cleaned the property up. We went in and we basically cleaned up the overgrowth and the underbrush. And then what we do typically on our subdivides, if it's heavily wooded, is we'll go in and we'll cut paths into the property so you can physically walk into the property, and then we'll open up some small build sites, just so that way the buyer can at least have some sort of a vision. Because in Virginia, it's heavily wooded. These tracks, typically you pull up to a property and you just see trees. So it could be a little overwhelming, or maybe you just can't see the property for what it is. So we like to try to draw people in to experience the property for its beauty and what it has to offer. So that's why we do the paths or the clearing and stuff like that. But we have done larger improvements on other projects, but just not that first one.
Very cool. I love the story about the Civil War cemetery on there and all of that. That's fascinating. So,
I thought that
um,
was going to be the hardest lot to sell, and it was like one of the first ones we sold. And it was a flag lot too on top of that. So it was like all the things working against you, but you just never know who the buyer is, right?
yeah, and I think that's a great point, is that a lot of people, myself included, we can sometimes fall in this trap of trying to just put ourselves in the shoes of the buyer and say, I would never want that. So I don't know who else would ever want that. But there are people out there for every type of property, right? So
Yeah, of
very
course.
cool. Very cool. I love that. So let's talk a little bit about, that was your first subdivide. Now, your business model now, is it still paper subdivides, or are you actually going in there doing some improvements? What would you say is the type of improvements that you're doing at this point?
I think with the market shifting today, you have to offer more value, I think, for people when they're purchasing. So we are doing larger improvements. So we're doing fencing now and gates. We're doing private drives, or at least a private gravel entrance. We're still cutting paths in. If it's a heavily wooded track like in Virginia, we'll do right-of-way roads. If it's to a track that's in the back of the property, maybe it's the way that we've got the subdivide drawn up. We perk our lots typically in Virginia, just to make sure that if somebody comes in and they want to build a home, they've already got their perk tests in place. That way it doesn't delay our closing process. And our first deal that we just actually closed on yesterday in Texas, on that deal, we're actually doing the private road, we're doing gates and entrances, and then we're actually having the overhead power lines ran by the power company.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. So you're adding value to all of these lots
Yes.
for sure.
Yes.
Excellent. And so you mentioned that your very first deal was a subdivide deal. Obviously, you have a pretty expansive construction background, but not very many people start off with subdivides as their very first deal. as a foray into the land space. So, what type of mental mind kind of roadblocks did you have, if any, when you first got started in doing a subdivide in land?
Sure. I think just like with anything, it's the fear of the unknown, right? You just don't have any experience. I understand that my background was construction development, but it's different in that scenario because I typically would have a full working set of plans. We would have architects, engineers, subcontractors, general contractors. So that's more of you're managing like an overall process. Whereas this is you're taking a piece of dirt from nothing, right? You've got to make some improvements to get things going and make it marketable. So I think with anything, it's just facing the fear head on. Honestly, I've always had like belief in myself, strong mental toughness, grit, determination. Those are things that I just was raised with. And honestly, there's nothing complicated about what we're talking about. It's just actually going through the process of picking up the phone, having conversations, asking other people in your network, finding good coaches, getting in good networks. And really, the land community in general is very generous, very giving group of individuals. Um, Most of the time you can text, call, direct message somebody, and more than likely they will help you or at least point you in the right direction. So for me on this one, I just thought to myself, okay, my biggest fear was how do I sell it to the investor? That was the thing I was concerned about. I already knew based on my own research that the property, we were going to get it for 50% of market value, and it had this huge upside to it once we got it subdivided and back on the market. And so it was like, okay, how do I put a pro forma together? So that was really where my big hurdle was, is I'd never put any type of investment documents together to show and sell to a group. Watched some YouTube videos, asked some questions, put a pro forma together. I think my first pro forma was like 12 pages and I had all these scans in it and these charts and these graphs, and I sent it out and did a Zoom call with the investors, and they're like, yeah, this looks great. They're like, we just need you to answer like three things. And they wanted me to go basically provide some additional information on comps and sell through rate and something else. But it was like, you have that aha moment. You're like, oh, wow, like that big fear, that giant hurdle that I had put in front of myself was not that scary at all, actually. And so you do one, you gain some confidence, you start getting some momentum, and it's okay. So I went from 30 acres, and I think I just jumped right up to, I think we went to 57, and then the next one was like 296. It was just like, you know,
Yeah.
because you start just repeating the process, and this business is math.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
I definitely get that. I love that. I love that so much. And so you had built yourself up to do this like scary presentation, sending this pro forma to investors, and it was not anything like you imagined it would be.
nothing. I was nervous and sweating and probably looked white as a sheet on the Zoom call. They probably thought I was probably had a vitamin D deficiency or something. I don't know,
That is too funny. That is too funny. So, you mentioned that your pro forma was 12 pages and scans and all this other stuff now. What do your pro formas look like now?
they're typically just an Excel doc with multiple tabs in it. So it might be 4 or 5 tabs with all the information that an investor would want to see or look at. And then I'll typically send some additional like PDF attachments, maybe a map of the area showing where the points of interest are, what is the time, the travel distance to certain things. Maybe might send some growth statistics or something like that, but keep it pretty basic. So
Excellent. Excellent. So, are you now investing in these subdivide deals, or are you basically funding the whole thing through other lenders and investors?
so my whole thing was if I was leaving my job, I needed to have basically a 1 year of runway in front of myself, money
Mm.
for bills, any type of emergency funds. I needed to make sure all of my credit was available if I needed to use credit for anything. So all of that was just like set aside. And so my initial business plan was go into this being willing to give up 50, 60% of all equity, raise all the money, not have any of my money in the deals if I don't have to, negotiate terms, and basically just wait to get paid on the backside. So that was how I went into these deals. All transparency, I think to date we've done about 2 million, and we had 2 million in lot value on the market, which was about 31 parcels. We're down to about 11. And so it's going to be about take me almost a year cycle for me to start seeing those returns back on my projects. But that is just the way that we structure the deals. So
Yeah.
yeah, I've raised. So typically on a purchase, we'll raise the debt side, and then we'll raise equity. Sometimes I have a debt investor who also brings equity. Sometimes it's a separate debt person or a bank, and then equity partners. And so that's just so we basically do a separate LLC for each deal, separate EIN, bank account, partnership agreement, waterfall structure. I's are dotted, T's are crossed. We use a closing attorney for everything. But yeah, it's that's just how we handle our deals.
Excellent. So I definitely want to dive into that a little bit more. But before we do that, if someone's listening to this and saying, okay, I'd love to do some subdivides. I've never heard of creating an LLC for each deal. What are the upsides of doing that? And why did you create an LLC for each deal?
So there's a couple of ways to structure these deals because I actually had a group within our network explain to me like the GP-LP setup. So we're actually going to be moving to that model next, honestly, just for protection purposes. I think based on just the coaches and the mentors that I had, they had shown me this path with just setting up separate LLC. So you don't want to commingle business, obviously. So the idea is to keep the Latitude Group, which is my business, like that accounting, that business is completely separate. We set up a new LLC. That way, all the partners, equity or debt, are into the new LLC partnership agreement. Like I said, the all of the terms are spelled out very clearly. The waterfall structure is in there. Everybody signs off on that document. That document actually goes into our closing packages. I think it's just a way of basically keeping your regular day-to-day business separate from actual capital investment deals that you're doing with partners, especially when there's money involved. To me, it's just we're very big on transparency. We do bi-weekly updates to our investors on how their projects are going and how things are tracking. We give them updates on property sales, obviously. If we have an equity split or a share coming out, a disbursement, they'll be notified about that type of stuff as well. But for us, it's just operating at a being as professional as possible.
Excellent. Yeah, it's a great way to keep your house in order financially. I love that. So, can you talk a little bit about how you go about raising money and raising capital for these types of projects?
Sure. So we have a list of investors, and each of them have their own personal underwriting criteria. So depending on what the return is going to be on the deal, some of them are looking for a 2x above purchase. Some are want a 1.6 to a 1.7. So we'll underwrite the deal ourselves. We'll see which this group of investors we think that would be interested in that deal, and then we'll actually put the pro forma together and send it to them with the terms and the breakdown, and then the key points to the project, expected return on investment, sell-through rate, comp, just all the things that would go into the pro forma, just to see what their appetite is to take on the deal. And then what we'll do is we'll tell them what the equity raise is going to be, and then they can decide on what type of a commitment they would like to make into the investment, whether it's, our minimum is 20,000. 20, 50, 75, 100. It just depends what they're willing to put in. And then, of course, once we have all the investors tied in, then we'll actually spit out the equity table and send that back to the investors to let them know what their portion and ownership of the actual project is.
Excellent. So, if you had to say, what would be an average number of investors that you have on any given project?
1 to 5.
Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So the one
Excellent.
that we just closed on yesterday, which was 875,000, is 1,250,000 total with the improvements, carrying costs, interest, those types of things. And so we have 5 investors on that one. I think the raise was around 330,000. And so they all have, I think we had 3 people put in 70, one put in like 45, and one put in, I think, 80 or 85, somewhere in those
Excellent.
numbers.
Yeah, very cool. So if someone is just listening to this and light bulbs are going off, or they're saying, hey, I can structure a subdivide deal without having to put an enormous amount of my own money into it. I can just start working with partners and get investors on board. What types of actionable tips would you give them to say, okay, step one, do this, step two, do this, step three, to get involved in these types of deals and to start structuring them?
I would start small, first of all. Anytime you're raising money and you're using other people's money, you want to make sure that you've got your bases covered. I'm risk averse when I first get into any type of investment opportunity. And so that would be the starting point I would recommend for anybody is think about what your risk tolerance is. There's a lot of stress that comes with managing other people's money. Money is a very emotional topic, as we all know. Make sure that you understand the project in its entirety and that you have full confidence in what you're able to return to your investors, because your the way that you present the deal and then what you deliver, those two things need to align, because what you're wanting to do is you're wanting to have your investors have confidence in what you're doing. So a huge part of that is making sure, again, you need to understand your deal inside and out. You need to be able to take all of the curveballs and the questions that they're going to throw at you to make sure that they have a level of comfort giving you their money. So that would be the first thing that would be the steps is start small, do something that is, I wouldn't go in at 150 acres on your first Subdivide deal. Like I said, we did 30 acres, which was very manageable. All in, we were at $93,000. I would probably try to keep it under $100,000 too, in terms of what your initial investment is. That's pretty manageable. There's not too much stress with that. And then just do what you say you're going to do. Build a good team around yourself. Make sure that you have accountability in place. Make sure you have great communication with your investors. The whole idea is, again, you are your brand. And so you want to make sure that you're forward facing and that you are offering a level of professionalism that maybe they're not going to get somewhere else. So
Yeah, that's great. That's really good advice. And how do you go about finding investors? Or did you start with family friends? I know a lot of people do that. Or how did you go about finding investors for your first deal?
So exactly that. So family and friends, getting in networks is a big one. So I'm in a financial mastermind. That's a great network. Going to live events, having conversations with other land investors, finding out where maybe that they were able to source lending as well. There's tons of lenders on Facebook. You can find people on Instagram. I would say the best resource though, honestly, for me, because it's people that I trust, is people within your own circle of influence and your networks. So you want to get into these smaller, close-knit groups and you want to start making introductions. You want to start having conversations. You want to do Zoom calls. You want to talk about your business. You want to be able to show proof that you're able to perform and what you've done in the past in terms of return on an investment or what profit margins you've been hitting. So they're going to want to look at your books. They're going to want to look under the hood of the car, and they're going to want to have some very, personal conversations with you to make sure that you're the right fit. Here's what I will say though, is that there's so much money out there. You just got to go ask for it. And I know Kendall can speak to that. I think that's a huge, maybe fear that most people have, is like, how do I raise money? How do I get money? The money's there. It's everywhere. You just got to go ask for it, and you got to have confidence in yourself, and you've got to know that what you're delivering to your investors is what you said you were going to do. It's that simple. It's not, I don't think it's overly complicated at all.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. So shifting gears a little bit, let's start talking about the market. I know that you have been in this for a little bit now. Where do you see the market going? There's lots of conversation right now about market shifts and changes in the market and all this other stuff. So where do you see the market going, and how are you anticipating that's going to impact the land business?
I think the market has softened. I think that it's very obvious that's happening, depending on what state you're in and specifically what jurisdiction or what cities you're working around. But there's a lot more properties on the MLS than I've seen in the last year. A lot of sellers still are in the COVID hangover bubble and are thinking that their property is worth what their neighbor sold it for 2 years ago. And unfortunately, they missed that window. So there's going to have to be some honest conversations with people that are trying to sell their property and coming to the game this late. But you can still add value to those people's lives as well, whether it's you work with them to do a subdivision or development, or if it's just a flip property. But I think that the thing that is going to, with the market as it is now, you have to stand out. You have to do the value adds. Your value adds need to be of high quality. You need to make sure that you're building strong relationships with your vendors, your contractors, because we're all in this together and everybody needs to eat. And I think there's plenty to go around for everybody, quite honestly. And yeah, the market has shifted. I think, again, it's just more about you have to add value and just bring a level of professionalism to separate yourself from everybody else.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I love the idea of what you mentioned just now about perhaps you partner with the landowners to be able to do a subdivide. That can be a great strategy. If you can't get it cheap enough to where you can take down the whole thing, why not partner with the seller? That's a fantastic strategy.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot of people that are, it's not to, that are dirt rich and money poor. And you can bridge that gap for them. You know what I mean? You just got to be a good human being. It's you basically just talk to the landowner and let them know what the value of the property could be if they want to go through the development process with you. And again, it's just having real, honest conversations with people. And people are happy to talk to you and share where they're at in their life and where their pain points are. And sometimes you can be the conduit or the person to alleviate that for them. And the great thing about that too, Kendall, and it's like this business, it's incestual in a weird way where you do something right for one landowner and then maybe they tell their cousin Eddie, and then cousin Eddie tells Bobby, his neighbor, and it's just, man, before it fighting deals up with a stick, just do what you say you're going to do. Be a good human being. Do good quality work. I think that we've had a lot of bad actors in the industry in the last couple of years. I've actually been called out to look at some stuff, and you've got to just make sure that you are providing a good quality product to your end buyer and your end user. And if
Absolutely.
and just be honest. So
Yeah, that's really great. And there's a lot of conversation today in the land industry about, and I get this question all the time. Do you think land is becoming overly saturated? Do you think that there's too much competition to be successful in land? And I think, my answer is always what you just said, just there. There will always be people that are entering the market, but the way that you set yourself apart is that you do quality work and that you are, full of integrity and you do what you say that you're going to do. I think that's how you separate yourself. That's how the wheat is separated from the chaff, right?
it
I
also
really,
feels better. It feels better when you get to the
sure.
end of a project, Kendall, and you're like, man, this is a beautiful piece of property that somebody's going to buy, possibly build on, and create memories on with their family. Like
Absolutely.
that's just very fulfilling and rewarding. Just do it right the first time.
Definitely. And I love one of the things I love about the land space is that creativity is really a component to success in this business. And so if you're looking at deals with only one exit strategy or one way of doing it, you're limiting yourself from a lot of other opportunities, right? And so these sellers that may need X amount of money for their land, just like you mentioned, they may be money rich and or money poor, dirt rich kind of thing. They may not have any idea that they can partner with someone and they can get money in a different way other than just that traditional transactions. Really love that insight. Let me ask you, what would you say are some of the most important tactical skills to have in the land industry?
First, you've got to be able to talk to people. That's probably the most important one
Yeah,
because that's a majority of what this business is, right? It's having conversations with people, whether it's your realtor broker, the seller, your contractors, the closing, your attorney, title, all those people you're constantly having conversations with. So you need to be able to just speak to people in a professional and courteous way. And I think that one of the things that I see a lot is in this business, I've noticed it with a lot of people coming into the space, not guys like you or some of the old crew, but people seem to hyper focus on, I've got to have the best CRM. I've got to have 5 VAs that are perfectly trained. I've got to have ringless voicemail, and they worry so much about all of the process and the procedure of trying to build out their dream business, and they haven't done any work yet. It's like the thing that is going to move your business forward is the boring, monotonous stuff that you're trying to avoid doing by bringing all these other things into your business. I'm basically a one-man show. I've got a business partner who works and basically handles all of our back of house stuff, but I don't have a giant team and we're managing just fine. But what I do know is I have a strong mindset. I have grit and determination. And the first thing that I do during the day is I do all the stuff that I don't want to do. I do those things first thing in the morning, and then everything else just falls into place. And then you get to do the fun stuff in your business. So
Yeah.
I would just tell all the new investors, and maybe even some of the guys that have been around for a while and they're struggling, simplify the business as much as you can, because that's when it gets fun, honestly. Trying to add all these layers into your business when you're just getting started or you're trying to scale up, believe it or not, that those things can actually take away from your business. Again, just the monotonous, boring stuff that we're avoiding doing, that's the stuff that's making the impact in the business. So just do that stuff and get it over with and get it behind you. I can tell you, yesterday we just closed on our biggest deal, and I thought that there was going to be like this moment, right? I'm at the Starbucks, I'm signing these documents, I'm signing my life away. It's a 2x on this investment, which is fantastic. I walked out of there and I was like, huh, okay, it's time to find another deal. Build up and the stress of everything that led up to that closing, which took about 2 months. It was like the joy, the juice was in the process. That was the fun
Yeah,
part, right?
that's right.
So
It's the journey for
it is
sure.
the journey.
Yeah, I love that. That's fantastic insight. So let's shift gears, go into some nuts and bolts a little bit. How do you pick a target area to find deals?
Hey there, Land fans. If you're enjoying this episode and would like to see more episodes like this, please be sure to let us know by liking and subscribing below.
We look at a lot of growth statistics. I look at the U-Haul stats. For us, primarily, we are focused on subdivides. And then for 2024, we're also working on entitlements. We actually have an entitlement deal we're working on right now and some others in the pipeline. But there's so much opportunity in Texas right now. So we've shifted our focus to Texas and really the triangle that we all talk about. But for us, it's 50 to 150 acres. We like to do major and minor subdivides. We like to keep our improvement costs in the 150 to $200,000 range when we can. Road access is a big deal for us. It's actually the first thing that we look for in our checklist. Not to say that we can't make a subdivide or a development deal work if it's got an easement, but that's just one of our preferences. I think that's pretty much, we keep it pretty basic.
Excellent. You mentioned growth statistics. You look at the U-Haul stats. Let's drill down a little bit into that. What other numbers do you look for in terms of growth statistics when you're trying to pick a market? And how does that inform and guide your eye to where you're going to actually be looking in Texas?
Yeah, so we like to be within 30 minutes to an hour outside of a major metropolis. And so with those growth statistics, it's going to be what is the growth look like within those major metropolises. So household median income, what is the growth percent or rate year over year? We also look at who are the major job providers in the area. Taylor right now is getting the Samsung chip factory right now. So that's a good area to be focusing in right now. Um, Again, we don't overcomplicate it too much, to be honest with you. Kendall, I know that you could get a little bit more granular than that, but I think really just those couple of statistics, honestly. So household median income, year over year population change or growth, and then where are people moving to, and then who are the major job providers in the area? How many jobs are they generating?
Got it. And so for median income, is there something that you're looking for specifically? Is there a threshold that you're looking for when it comes to median income?
We like to see 75,000 and above typically.
Got it. And then you said that year-over-year growth, what numbers are you looking for there to earmark that, yeah, this might be a potential market?
I like to see at least 1 to 1.5% of population change or growth.
Great. Very good. And so you mentioned you did a great job of telling us a little bit about the criteria for your deals that you like to look for. Can you talk a little bit about what are some deal killers for you? If you see something that comes across your desk that has one of these factors, what is it that you'll say, okay, this is definitely a no-go?
Retouching back on road access, to me, that's a big one. Just looking at sell-through rate and just overall sold statistics, it typically is driven a lot by road access. We would prefer for paved if possible, but county maintained gravel road is just as good. Wetlands is a big one for us, or if it's in the flood zone. What I don't want to do is look at a 100-acre piece of property and I can only develop 60 or 50% of it because it might be in a floodplain. That's a harder sell typically. And then ideally, we would like for it to be within a proximity to some sort of a utility, whether it's water, sewer, or electric. We typically want to at least be able to extend one of those three services. And when those aren't available or some of those services aren't yet, so what we like to do is we'll do an a la carte ad package for our buyers. So if somebody comes in and they're like, hey, I would like to have, because we typically don't fence in all of our lots just because we don't know how many acres someone might want to buy. So we'll offer to fence in your property. We'll have the water, we can have the water well installed for you or the septic as well. So that way we just take that stress or onus off of our end buyer. And so we'll just basically package that together and then just put a little bit of a markup on it. But that gives them the ability, if they're setting like a manufactured home or if they're going to build, it's just one less thing for them to have to worry about because then they can just roll that into their construction package.
That's very cool. Yeah. Again, it goes back to adding that value, which is fantastic. You mentioned sell-through rate. Is there a specific sell-through rate that you like to see?
1 to 2 at the minimum.
Yeah. So I realize there may be someone that's listening to this that might be a newer term for them. Can you talk a little bit about sell-through rate and how you allow it to influence you one way or the other?
Yeah, so for sell-through rate, that's basically the number of properties listed versus the properties sold. And we with the market changing like it is now, we don't like to look past anything more than 6 months. And really even that's even changing to where it's probably getting closer to 3 months now. But yeah, so we like to see properties selling at a reasonable time frame versus the number of properties that are on the market. Because if you're going into a market where there's a lot of saturation, and even though you are offering value add, you're still going to end up having to undercut what you think your property is worth just to get eyeballs on it. So for us, we like to focus on counties where properties are not sitting more than 3 to 6 months. And typically there's more properties selling than are staying on the market. So that's ideal for us.
Yeah, that's great. That's really good. Let me ask you, because you are in the business of doing Subdivide, sometimes these may be a little bit more rural, especially if you're up to an hour from a major metro area. Sometimes in this market, it might be difficult to find comps for some of these more rural properties. So how do you guys go about valuing a property if you can't find comps within that maybe 6 to 9 months, or even within a mile or two vicinity? How do you go about valuing properties when you've got limited access to comps or limited comps available, I should say?
That's a good question, Kendall. I don't know that we've really ran into that, but I will say with the last deal that we just put together, we actually had the property appraised. And so that appraisal gave us another layer of basically an underwriting, if you will, into the property and what the value could be. And so they actually pulled a little bit of a wider focus outside of the actual property, just because they wanted to make sure that they got apple to apples on the actual
Yeah.
comp based on the improvements that we were doing. So sometimes you do have to go a little bit further out, but obviously you've got to stay within a certain mile radius. But I think just in addition to the comps that were available, having that additional underwriting in place and just having that third party look at what we thought the value was going to be after improvements, that really helped for sure.
Yeah, that's really good. That's really good. How much did that appraisal cost? Do you remember?
So we paid for, I think it's called a 3-tier appraisal. So basically what they do is they give you the value of the property in its current state, so current market. They give you the value of the property after the improvements are done, but not subdivided. And then they give you the value of the property subdivided, recorded, and all improvements. So we got basically three values. And that was, yeah, so it's $3,500. And
Oh,
I think you can get it for a little cheaper than that. But to me, that was well worth the price. And what was great is we were able to take that and show that to our lender, which gave them another level of comfort too in the project itself.
absolutely. Yeah, that's super valuable. That's really good. So, what is your method for actually finding deals? And I know that we talked about some on-market stuff. So once you have figured out, do you identify a target market first and then look for deals, or do you look for the deals and then go in and evaluate the market?
I look for the deals and then go and evaluate the market.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So these are on-market deals, I'm assuming?
Most of my stuff is on market, but I'm also starting to build, I've been building out that realtor broker network. And so I'm starting to get some pocket listings or off market stuff, which is good.
Yeah,
Hoping that through this interview that I'll get some leads.
for sure. For sure. Yes. I love that. I love that.
Um,
So when you are reaching out to agents, I imagine that you definitely have a leg up with some of the agents that you've done business with in the past because they know that you can close and that you're a proven buyer and all of that good stuff. But are you actually reaching out to agents that you've not worked with before?
yes.
Okay. And so what is that process like? What are the conversations like? Can you talk to us a little
It's
bit about
pretty
that?
straightforward. So I steal so Trevor Probant is my mentor, and
Yeah, Trevor is great. Fantastic.
he's become a really good friend, and so he's done a lot of coaching with me. And I use the Trevor Probant method, quite honestly. I will go on lands.com, Realtor, Redfin, Zillow. I'll look for who, flip it to solds, see who's actually selling the property, who is the better realtor broker in the area that's actually selling the most properties, go in and look at their listings, and then call them and just start having a conversation about, hey, if I was going to do deals in your market and I was going to bring you 8 to 10 deals a year, where would you recommend that I look within the market? Where should we be at price per acre based on if I'm buying 50 to 150 acres? And you have that conversation, just pretty straightforward. Ask them how many deals are they doing annually, monthly, what's their average? Where do they think that maybe some of the newer developments that might be coming online should be going in at in terms of working with rural developers or builders? Yeah.
That's really good. That's gold nuggets right there, people. Really good stuff. Whenever you are talking with these agents, do they often ask for, let me see proof of funds first, or how do they vet you? If someone's going out and having these conversations with agents, what can they expect from the agent?
I think if you talk the talk, I think it just opens up the door for a pretty easy conversation. I think if you're able to talk like you're an actual developer and the nomenclature and the right language to use around these conversations, most of the time, I just let people talk honestly. They'll usually tell you everything you need to hear. So I try not to talk first. I try to do a brief introduction, talk about what the direction of the company and the business is and what we do and what we offer, the type of work that we do, that we're not going to just come in and do paper sublots and then just try to sell them, put them back on the market and sell them to the public. So I explain to them that we're there to do a good job, provide value in the market. We want to be a good neighbor. We want to provide value and opportunity for people to come in and buy land, because that's what we're doing, right? We're taking these large tracts of land and we're breaking it down and making it more affordable for others. And then I just let them just tell me what's going on. I think the main thing too in all this, Kendall, is that we seem to forget that people are humans and that they're just like us. So I'll ask people, tell me about the local high school and who's the county commissioner and what do you guys need to see in the county? What are you guys looking for? What do you need? Ask them if do you have kids? What's your dog's name? You just gotta, if once you get on a personal level with people, you'd be surprised what they'd be willing to tell you and talk to you about.
That's great. That's really good advice. Yeah, I think that it is super easy, especially as investors. We're very dollars and cents focused, and lots of times a decision to invest in a property is a black and white decision. You mentioned earlier, it's all math. So it can get very easy to forget that behind the math, there's actually people, and it is a people business. Alicia Jarrett likes to talk about that a lot, that this is a people business at the end of the day. Yes, it's a lot of numbers and dollars and cents, but people at the end of the day. So connecting with people, super important. I think that's a great piece of advice.
Yes, it's a very transactional business that we're in.
Right.
So
For sure.
you've got to humanize it as best as possible.
Definitely. Definitely. And that can be the difference between someone going with you or someone going with someone else, right? That's that competitive edge that we talked about.
Yeah, you hear those stories all the time where you weren't like the highest offer, but because you connected with the seller and they felt like that you were a person of integrity and had principles that they wanted to work with you.
Absolutely. Yep. Yep. That happens all the time. I think we each have a story like that. So, can you talk a little bit about, are you doing only cash for all of your transactions, both on the buy and sell side? Are you creating any notes, any type of creative financing? What are you doing with that?
We have been fortunate enough that all of our deals have been cash sales so far. I know that is unrealistic to think that's going to continue forever, because it's not, especially because of what's happening in our current economic climate. I'm really hoping that they start lowering interest rates next year, because I think that the land thing will definitely switch if we see interest rates come down, because then banks come back into play. But right now it's just so hard to get money. But we are definitely looking at and understand the importance of offering owner financing. I think that the thing for us on some of our deals, Kendall, is when you have a debt obligation in play and you have equity. So typically our debt providers will not let us offer owner financing on notes until the debt has been satisfied, unless that debt provider is a note buyer, which they may table fund. So it's really just trying to figure out what is the best fit based on who the lender is in our situation. But we are absolutely 100% open to owner financing. And I know that's going to be something that is going to be more regular in our business. So again, we've just been very fortunate to have a lot of cash sales, but I know that's that can't last forever.
Awesome. Love it. What are some of the most common things you've seen people overlook or underestimate when first starting in the land business?
Overlook or underestimate, is that what you said?
Yeah.
I think that people overlook I think that they get too caught up in the course material and trying to check all the boxes and trying to basically just repeat the recipe. And I realize that the recipe works. It does. You know what I mean? If I'm going to make pancakes, I'm going to follow the recipe. But maybe I want blueberries. Maybe I want chocolate chips. So you have got to be amendable and understand that, okay, that is a guideline for you to how you should run your business, but you still have to find out what works best for you. So I think sometimes people put themselves in a box where they feel like, I've got to do it this certain way for it to work. And that's not the case. I'm a great example of that. I took a land course like everybody else did. I bought 5 lots in Castilla County. I figured out very quickly, this
Yeah.
is for me. This is not a good fit for basically where I was coming from and where I thought my skill set was. And so you have to be able to pivot and be amendable to just looking at different types of conditions and what fits your strengths in your business. And then the things that you aren't strong at, you need to basically figure out, okay, how do I learn how to do these things? Because what I wouldn't recommend is everybody wants to hire out the thing that they don't want to do. You need to first learn how to do that thing first before you hire it out. You need to make sure that you can show somebody or explain to somebody how to do that. And then also bring in professionals around you for things that you really don't know how to do. So I'm not an attorney. I'm not trying to write a partnership agreement for an LLC. That's what the attorney's for. We have a closing coordinator. I don't want to talk to the title company, and I don't want to have to chase down all these documents. You pay for those things to get done on a higher professional level. That is a professional experience. Sending out mail is not a professional experience. So you need to do all the boring and monotonous things that we talked about in the kind of in the beginning of this interview to move your business forward. You need to know how to do all those little things. So that would be the one part of the question that you asked me.
Yeah, that's good. That's really good.
What was the other part? I'm sorry.
I think you answered it. It was just, what is something that people often overlook or underestimate when starting
Okay,
their land
got it.
business?
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Good stuff.
Underestimate the power of the network. That was something that I definitely underestimated in the beginning, because you're trying to do so much by yourself. And this business is very lonely if you allow it to be. That you get into groups and you get into networks and you go to live events. Those are the things that make significant impacts in your business, is being around the right group of people, knowing that you can call on them at a moment's notice when you need something very important in your business. And then also just making those connections at live events with people where you have synergy with people. You start to develop friendships. You start to connect and do business deals together. So that is something that I definitely underestimated and did not appreciate the value of. This past year, I paid in excess of $20,000 for coaching and live events, and it was a 20 to 30x return in my business.
It's incredible. Yeah, it's massive. It's absolutely huge. And we talked about this earlier. I think that one of the coolest things about the land industry is how generous people are in the land business. And if you get around the right people, what is it like rising tides lift all ships kind of thing? I think that's so true, especially in this industry.
Yeah, I met you at a live event a month ago.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean,
Yeah.
and who
Yeah.
knows where this will take my business or your business. It's just putting yourself out there, getting into
Yeah.
these rooms with the right people. And it's fun. There's so many great people in this environment. These are some of the most generous and humble people too. Like there's nobody like trying to flex a Rolls Royce or private plane or the Lambo. We're just regular people. Not to say that some of the investors don't have those things and those toys are not deserving of them, because they certainly are. There's some awesome OGs in this biz, but yeah, get in these groups, get around these people. Huge payback on that.
Definitely agree with you there. So, what is something that no one is talking about in the land industry right now that, in your opinion, we should be talking about?
I think so. Kendall, you and I have talked about this we talked about it at the live event when we were sitting with Callan and stuff like that. So I think something that is massively overlooked is people taking care of their personal health. So whether that's working out, eating clean, exercising, walking your dog, your relationship with your wife or your spouse or your significant other, like all of these things are so important and play such a big role in your day-to-day life and have a huge impact in your business. And listen, everybody has got their own reasons for why or why not, but I will tell you, like I started down the personal development path about 5 years ago, and the significant increases in my life in terms of the quality of my life are immeasurable when I started putting my health and fitness first, because it has a direct correlation to how you feel, your mood, your energy, how you interact with people, how people see you and how they view you and how they interact with you. And I would just like to, and I think mental health as well is a big one. We talked about, Clint brought that up at the event, which I thought was great, is this is a lonely business, and there's good days and there's bad days. And if you've read the book, The Entrepreneur Roller Coaster, this is one of those events and moments where 90% of the time it's low, and then you get 10% of it is high. And so you're on this continuous, just bouncing around with your emotions, if you will. But make sure you have a good group of people around you. Don't be afraid to be vulnerable. Be honest with people. Have conversations that are a little uncomfortable. And then also check in on your friends around you, check in on your family members. But get outside, get some fresh air, walk your dog, take some vitamins, eat a steak. So
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Completely agree. And I think that could be we could have a whole podcast series on that alone. Super big passion of mine as well. But yeah, that's a fantastic sort of field to explore. I think it's so impactful in every aspect of your life, including your business. Let me ask, what do you consider to be your superpower?
I'm great at building teams and managing teams. I've always been good at that. So even from the time that I was a kid, I was usually captain of the team in some form or fashion. When I was running big, large projects and managing multi-million, six, seven, eight-figure deals in construction, I always just found that I would just assemble the team around me. And just to me, it was like a baseball coach mentality. So it was like, put the good people on the field that are going to allow you to win, and just make sure that everybody has what they need to succeed, because we're all working toward the same goal. So that's just where my superpowers always come in. That, and I don't mind risk. I'm the type of person that will jump out of the airplane and assemble the parachute on the way down. just because I have enough confidence in myself to get the job done, just because I've been put in those types of situations throughout my life, deadlines, or it's the bottom of the ninth and I'm on the mound or whatever. But it's just that belief in yourself that you're going to get it done and you're going to do what it takes to get it done the right way with integrity and purpose and principles. Yeah, I think that's, I like building and leading teams. I like watching the end result and everybody win together. That's what gets me excited.
That's really good. What's your definition of success?
Ooh, Kendall. I have this thing that I do. I just did it actually in December. So I do like my yearly planning and my goals and stuff. And the question I keep coming back to with myself is, who do I have to become the best version of myself? And so there's several parts that go to that. So first is health. And so for me, for health, what does that look like? That's consistency with working out, sunlight, breath work, sauna, those types of things. Relationships. So that'd be the relationship that I have with my spouse or my friends or my family. Those relationships need to be strong. I need to be having regular conversations with those people, not just a text message. In terms of faith, it's my walk with God. And am I showing up as a Christian like I'm supposed to? And then for finance, it's am I doing everything that I can in my business to be successful? So that's for me, my definition of success is when I am performing at 90% in those four categories and holding myself accountable and living to the set of standards that I have for myself.
That's really good. I love how intentional that is, right? Like it's so easy to get caught up in the day-to-day just doing business and you look up and it's, oh my gosh, the year has passed and what did I really do? So I really love that intentionality behind that. Do you have any favorite entrepreneurs, authors, business owners that you like to follow?
Yeah, so there's about 4 or 5 that come to mind. So as far as like mentors, earlier I mentioned Trevor. So Trevor's a really close friend. And I need to also really quick do a shameless plug here for John. John Jasniak is an incredible coach. I would recommend anybody who's starting in the business and they're wanting to get into the Subdivide game. John's course is very straightforward. John is very easy to connect with. He's very transparent. He is a stud at document in terms of like deeds and wraparound notes and just all of that type of stuff. So and again, too, I just think that the value and the information that you get from him for what his course costs is definitely there. Huge shout out to John because he really lit the fire in my business. And I need to say that for him. But I'm a huge fan of Andy and Sal Frisella, the guys that own First Form. Andy's the MFCEO. It was like a business podcast that I stumbled into a couple years back. And really, he was the person that kind of set me on my mental toughness journey, honestly, and rebuilding my life about 5 years ago. And so I'm consistently following him. I use all of his products too. First Form is a great supplement company. They make everything here in the US. So great company. They do a lot of charity work. So that's who I use for, I would say, mental toughness, working out, that type of stuff. Some business stuff. For business related, Alex Hormozy is my go-to. That guy just came out of nowhere, but he is so logical. And I think the way that he explains business, it's almost elementary, but it's so relatable. And he's so good at doing that to where he's just able to take these complex business structures and break them down to where you can just see it for what it is. So I'm really grateful for Alex and his wife, Layla, and what they're just giving to the world. Very generous people. For wisdom and kind of personal growth and like inner peace, Chris Williamson, if you know who that is, Modern Wisdom. He's a super great guy. He's out of the UK, but he lives in Austin now. He's making a big splash in the space. And then my day-to-day for like world news and update, I go to PBD. Patrick Bet David. That's my core group.
Yeah. Love it. Love it. Yeah. I follow, I think all but one. So I've got some new homework to do there. Really good stuff. If you could go back and tell yourself 3 pieces of advice when you were a newbie, what would they be?
Not a newbie though. I'm 48. I would say if I was going to go back and redo my land journey again and start over last year, I would have put a little bit more time and effort into the flip side of things. The problem with doing subdivides, honestly, Kendall, is there's no cash flow. You're the last guy to get paid. And so you better be really good at betting on yourself and the investment that you're taking down. So that would be one for sure. I probably would have not bought some of the subdivides that I did buy last year, just because I probably forced a square peg into a round hole just because I got a little too excited. When you're trying to sell yourself on your own deal, just let it go. If it's not a hell yes, it's a hell no. So there's a little piece of advice for you guys.
That's a huge one. That's a
It
huge
is a
one.
huge one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I have been guilty of this myself. I see so many people do it where you just get so excited that you're close to doing a deal that you will just fudge some things and just try to force it to be a deal. And at the end of the day, there will always be issues with that kind of thing. So if it's not a hell yes, it's a hell no. That's so good.
The
That's so
math.
good. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, you're
Yes.
right. I've forced the numbers in my Excel, or I've
Yeah.
convinced myself of unrealistic comps.
Put some lipstick on a pig and said, now we got a deal.
That's right.
So
That's
I
right.
get it. I definitely.
I think maybe too, just I would have probably went in and not tried to just take on so much of the workload myself. So I probably would have brought an EA in on at this point, which we're in the process of doing. But I think just trying to, in the beginning, do everything can bog your business down in some form or fashion. And you can experience a little bit of burnout. Just try to make sure that you're cognizant of all the things that you're trying to do, and then focus on the things that you really need to do in your business, because it's easy to want to do everything. So
Absolutely. No, that's fantastic. And congratulations for being on the road to hiring your executive assistant. I'm such a huge fan of Dan Martell's Buy Back Your Time. And
yeah, um, Callan told me about
yeah,
him. I've never even known about him, and now I'm following him. Yeah.
so good, so good. So many gems in there, and it will definitely change your life to start delegating some of those other tasks to people so you can be a bit more efficient and just impactful as a whole. Finally, what is your biggest passion or goal you'd like to achieve at this point in your life?
Our 5-year goal is a family office. So that's the long-term goal. So basically, we're going to continue to do subdivides. With my background and experience, we're working on entitlements now. And then the long-term goal, probably 3 years, is to start doing some actual development work and then getting to the commercial space. Kendall, with this business, it's very capital gains heavy. So we need depreciating assets. So you need to start looking at buying commercial buildings, self-storage, industrial, anything of that, little small shopping centers. But yeah,
Really?
the 5-year goal, and it's on my board up there, is family office. So
Love it. Love it. I'm looking forward to watching your journey through that. That's really incredible stuff. And that world, commercial real estate, commercial buildings and capital raising, that's a whole other beast where you're talking about billions, like the billions with a B, right? And some really cool, exciting stuff there. So very excited for you to be on that journey. So last thing, I first want to thank you so much for giving to us today. You've been so generous with your time. How can we give back to you right now? What resources or connections are you looking for currently?
yeah, so we have decided, so for this year, we are happy to work with other land investors that have, and not just new into the game. So maybe hopefully you've been in for a year, maybe 2 years. But if you're wanting to get into subdivides, if you are interested in reaching out and you have a deal that you think meets a subdivide criteria, and maybe you've underwritten it yourself, ideally, we will work with you on that subdivide. So you can bring it to us. We will actually operate it for you. We will take you through the entire subdivide process. We will show you how that process works in terms of building the team out, visiting the site, what to look for, how to subdivide the property, how to have conversations with your broker and your agents, and then put it back on the market. So If that is of interest to anybody, we're going to probably do 3 to maybe 5 deals this year with a select handful of people. Ideally, Texas would be our preference, but if it's out of state, not a big deal. We've done work in Virginia. We like the Southeast, the Sun Belt area is definitely our preference just because sell-through rates and migration, everybody's moving to the Southeast. So that would be one way to give back. We've talked about it a bunch of times, but just be a person of integrity in this business. That's what we're looking for. The problem is that we have so many people getting into the business or getting out, or we've had some bad actors in the business for a while. Just do what you say you're going to do. Be a principled person. Don't be afraid to have those hard conversations with your sellers or your buyers. Honesty is always the best bet. So
Absolutely.
I think that's it, man. So and take care of your health. Just take care of yourself.
Really good. Yeah, definitely. Definitely. So if someone's listening to this and they may have a subdivide that fits that criteria in Texas, the Sun Belt, Virginia area, how can they reach out to you if they want to partner with you and work with you on that?
Yeah, so you can reach me on Facebook or Instagram. So on Facebook, I believe it's Rick Rauch on Facebook, and then on Instagram, it's Rick J Rauch. And
Excellent.
you can just drop me a message. And all I would ask again is don't just send me a listing and say, hey, is this a good subdivide? I would
Yeah.
ask that you've actually done a little bit of research yourself, maybe underwritten it, you have a good feeling about it, and you're like, I think there's a good opportunity here, and we would be happy to partner with you. And again, take you through the subdivide process. We'll coach you through the whole process. We'll operate the deal for you. We'll even help raise the capital. And then you can basically have a hands-off equity type of experience there, and maybe we can do more deals together, or maybe we set you off on your subdividing journey, which would be great.
Yeah, that's awesome. That sounds like a great opportunity. And we'll go ahead and put the links to both your Facebook and your Instagram in the show description and the
Great.
show notes. That way you can connect with Rick once you have that subdivide opportunity. So, Rick, again, I want to thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. This has been an absolute pleasure. Rick, you have been phenomenal. Thank you, everyone, for joining us, for your questions. I hope that you have a very prosperous and blessed 2024. Looking forward to seeing you guys. Tons of new interviews, tons of new content for you. So thank you again for joining us and looking forward to seeing you in the next one. Until then, take care and we'll catch you next time. Bye-bye. If you're interested in hearing from other 6- and 7-figure land flippers about how they've built and run their businesses, then check out my group, OnlyLandFans, where I do a live interview each week inside the group. You can grab that link at the description below. Until then, be great, have a great week, and catch you in the next one.